Hey, I'm Luke Evans, and welcome to a unique Dracula Untold experience. I had a great time bringing the Prince of Darkness to life, and now I can't wait to show you how it was done. After I played Owen Shaw in Fast and the Furious 6, there was a discussion between myself and Universal about playing somebody else in a different film. So we discussed many different options, and the one option that sort of sparked my interest was Dracula. It was a great role for me, and I had a lot of fun playing that character.
I left it where I found it.
What do you think, Vlad? Bring it to me.
So the scene that we're looking at right now appears very early on in the film. It's the first time you actually see young Vlad, the Prince of Wallachia. He's heard a report that they have found Turkish armor on his land. And to Vlad, that means one thing. The Turks only enter a land if they want to invade it. And so to find this helmet in the river on his land means one thing to him. It's danger, it's a threat. When he picks up the helmet, as you see, there are huge scars on the side of the helmet. This isn't just a helmet, this is a helmet that was on a Turk's head, and it was on his land, and those marks were not made by anything he would know.
They're inside.
How do you know?
Bats don't come out during the day. Something's disturbed them.
This scene is when Vlad and his two henchmen, for the first time, enter the cave of the master vampire. There's something in this cave, and I think Vlad is the only person that's brave enough to want to explore and investigate what's up there. They made 3 caves, and this cave was all about the tunnel walking into the cave. So there was a huge sort of staircase of stone covered in skeletons and skulls and armor. What he realizes as he walks down this corridor into this cave, that there's not just armor from the Turks, there's armor from many other regions in Europe. They enter the cave, and he loses 2 of his men within the space of 5 minutes. They get swallowed up by the cave and by the creature inside the cave, which is played by the wonderful, phenomenal actor, Mr. Charles Dance. He plays the master vampire, who we see a very small glimpse of in this scene, but nothing too much. And Vlad uses his sword to swipe him and cuts him very slightly, makes the creature retreat back into the cave.
I missed you.
And I you.
Sarah Gagnon is a beautiful woman, inside and out. She's an incredible actress. She has a humongous responsibility in this film because she's the only woman. She's representing the females, and she's representing them in a brilliant way. She's a strong woman in the film. Morena plays a supportive wife and a loving mother, but a woman that stands by her man. This is the first scene where you see another side of Vlad. You see the family man. You meet his wife, Morena, and you meet his son, Ingress. It's a very important scene for the film because it sort of sets up the importance of the family to Vlad. And it's a lot of the reasons why he does what he does later on in the film is because of this love he has for his wife and his son. That's what we wanted to provide here, was a sense of family and love and security. But she sees in Vlad's eyes in this scene that there's something wrong. She knows him inside out. And that's what's wonderful about her, is that she's not just a wife and a mother, but she's a very strong soul companion of Vlad. And so she knows how he works and how he ticks, and she knows there's something wrong. So this scene is the banqueting hall inside Vlad's castle. It's quite an amazing set. I remember when I first arrived in Northern Ireland, 7 weeks before we started shooting, they were building this set, and we didn't use this set until about 2 months into film. So, as you can imagine, that's a long time. And the detail in the set was incredible. And behind the thrones, you'll see these amazing images of me and Morena and my son. The attention to detail and authenticity as well. I mean, there was a lot of reference to what you would see in castles of that period at that time. And yeah, I felt very royal that day, I have to say.
Welcome. We were not expecting you so soon.
So this gets broken up by the Turkish soldiers entering. Hamza Bey, who is played by the wonderful Ferdinand Kingsley, arrives with his men straight into the middle of this event, and immediately people are very uncomfortable. They know that this doesn't happen. You know, they collect their money and they usually leave. There's no dialogue, but they stay, and they have a reason to stay.
The Sultan requires 1,000 boys to join his Janissary Corps.
This happened to Vlad when he was a young boy. Him and his brother were sent by his father as a sort of peace treaty to be reared by the enemy. Vlad doesn't want this for his own son. He knows what that means. It's a huge threat, and it's the beginning of Vlad's journey to becoming a vampire, and the reasons why he starts to find those powers. This scene is, it was an incredible day, actually. We transformed a farmer's field into the immediate encampment around Mehmet's master tent. It was quite a day, and that horse I'm riding is probably the most beautiful creature I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, we ride into the encampment, and Mehmet's soldiers all remember me because I was brought up by the Turks. Vlad got himself quite a reputation. He was called Kaziglu Bey, which means Lord Impaler. He was a ruthless warrior, and they were scared of him. And the fact that he left the Turks to go back to his own country was a big deal. And now he's back in their encampment. So they have this fear of him, but also a respect of him, but also a sense of betrayal by him as well. So there's a lot of energy and electricity in this scene when I'm riding in on my horse. I'm going to the tent. I'm going to Mehmet's tent, which is where I meet Mehmet II, the Sultan of the Turkish Empire, played by the wonderful, the impeccable Dominic Cooper.
My oldest of friends.
Your Excellence.
Who is somebody who I've played against before as an enemy many years ago. So it's quite funny that we have revisited our enemy positions, but with much higher stakes this time. Dominic plays this sinister character who, you know, he's not very nice. He's really not very nice. Funny, because Dominic is very charming and very lovely, and a good friend of mine. And so it was quite fun. It's always fun to play against a friend and do something that you wouldn't actually do necessarily in real life. So we had a lot of fun. We meet in his tent, and it's all about me trying to make him compromise about his request to take the children of my kingdom and also my own child. So he's playing on the fact that they were both brought up as children together, but it doesn't work. What's happened is Mehmet II has become the Sultan and has gained with that a grotesque amount of power and is a demanding human being.
I count my soldiers by armies, my enemies by nations, and you? Not at all.
And knows by doing what he's doing to Vlad and requesting these children is going to cause the annihilation of his people.
Mehmet will be sending others soon enough. War will come. You can't protect us.
I'll find a way.
This scene is when Vlad goes back alone to the mountain. He's just killed a bunch of Turkish soldiers, which means one thing. It means war. And he's now left his country very vulnerable, his people vulnerable, and his family vulnerable. And so he looks to Broken Tooth because he knows something's up there. Something's in that cave. And so he goes back up alone. And this is where he meets the master vampire.
What kind of man is it that crawls into his own grave in search of hope?
A desperate one.
It's one of the most enjoyable scenes I got to shoot in the movie. Playing against such a brilliant actor as Charles. It was a joy. It was 4 days of a lot of fun. Even though it's not a fun scene, it was very fun to shoot. Vlad wants the power, and the master vampire wants the freedom. And between the two of them, they somehow come to an agreement. But it's a big moment for Vlad, and he's very brave to even enter that cave for a second time. Most people never get the second chance. Having to imagine yourself turning into a colony of bats is quite a difficult feat. And you have to really allow your imagination to go mad, go crazy. And the first time he does it, he's running very fast. And we had one double running far away from the camera, and he turns into bats, and then in front of the camera was me, and then I stop and reform as a human. I had to trust that was going to work. I had to trust Gary and the amazing digital department who created all the special effects to create that, and yeah, and it works very, very well. But it's a slow realization of this man who now has these powers, and the transforming into bats is something he uses very successfully throughout the movie. My dad, Dave the Rave.
I'm Luke Evans' dad.
He's been an extra in 3 of my movies. He upstages everybody. He can't remember his lines, but he loves dressing up.
Proud of him. Yeah, I am. Thank you very much.
He's in a scene when Vlad returns to the castle that's being bombed, and yeah, he's in there somewhere, waving a finger at his son, trying to tell him off. But yeah, he's been in quite a few different movies now.
Just enjoy watching it all going on. Yeah.
It's a joy. I mean, days on set are long and sometimes can be very boring and lots of hanging about. And to look out and be acting and see a familiar face was joy, yeah. I hope he doesn't get bored too soon, and we'll do a few more movies before I'm done. So this scene is when Mehmet's army is advancing on the castle, which has been pummeled by humongous cannons that the Turkish Empire used to shoot. They were humongous. This fight was called Vlad versus 1,000, and it's basically that. It's me against, not 1,000, about 160 people. It took a long time to learn this choreography. It had to change a few times. We had to adapt it because of the camera angles. We had to give a couple of flares. We then wired somebody so that I could lift him off the floor and he would spin up into the sky. I felt very good that day. There's a lot of dialogue goes into scenes like this. They can be very dangerous. There's a lot of blades flying about, and so everybody needs to know exactly where they're going to be, what height, what speed the blades are coming at you. It's a huge amount of preparation. I've done a lot of this stuff in the past, but this one was really detailed. The credit goes to the wonderful stunt choreographer, Buster Reeves, who has choreographed some of the most iconic fights in cinema history in the last 10, 15 years, 20 years. And he choreographed this, and so it was him and the immensely talented group of stuntmen that he works with. We spent many, many hours, many days, many weekends in a huge hangar in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, learning these stunt sequences. We had steady cams, as you see in this shot. We have a camera tracking next to it. They moved around, they were above, they were below, they were in the middle of it. They chased me at one point. So there was a lot of different angles to catch all the different hits and the stabbings and all the stuff that went on in this scene. It was a very fun day. It was a hard day. It was exhausting. But the finished product I'm very proud of, and it's quite nice to see the backstory and actually see behind the scenes in this, because you sort of see how it's all shot and how detailed some of the fight sequences are. It's all about accuracy, because where the camera is means where you punch and all that stuff. So yeah, it's great. When Vlad realizes he has the power of the bats, he knows that they are following him and they're around him the whole time. But once he realizes that they are congregating in the tower in this monastery, I think he realizes that he could use this to his own advantage. And so he goes up into the tower alone, and he looks into the eaves of this tower, and he sees hundreds and hundreds of bats just landing and almost waiting for his command. Below in the tower, lower down in the tower, Mirena and Ingarus, my wife and son, can see these millions of bats circling the tower and rising above, up to the top of it where I am. And he gathers these bats, and as he moves his hand, they move with him. And as he clenches his hand, they turn into a fist. Even though I knew the bats weren't there on the day, I had such a clear vision of how it was going to look that it was a very fun day, and I'm glad it's turned out as effective as it has in the film. Bats have always been associated with vampires. It seems very right and just that we honor that historical connection between that wonderful creature and the most famous vampire of all.
You can keep running if you like.
Marina.
It's a very sad moment in the film because everything Vlad has done to that point is for his family, is for his wife and his son and his people. And at this moment, he is tricked into fighting the army while his wife and son were beaten on the top of this tower. And Marina is pushed off the side of the tower. Just as Vlad arrives on the top of the tower, she loses her grip and falls. He jumps after her, desperate to catch her with all the power he has. He fails. He just misses her. Even with all those powers, sometimes he just, he failed. And it's a very sad moment that he loses his wife. It's the moment in the film where Vlad stops fighting for what he loves because she's dead. And then he just goes for full attack to this Turkish army. I mean, this is a man with so much pain and heartache and anger and revenge in his blood. It's the turning point in his life.
I understand you have a weakness for silver.
So this fight sequence is the final fight sequence in the movie, and it is an amazing set. We created the inner sanctum of the main Sultan's tent, and Mehmet has discovered that I now have a weakness to silver. And so what he does is he covers the whole of this inner circle in his tent in all the coins of my land, these silver coins that have my face on them. You could liken it to how Krypton is to Superman, silver is to Vlad. He can't touch it, it burns him. And he now has to fight surrounded by these coins that are silver and that have his face on them. And Vlad slowly loses more and more power. He's being drained by this silver that he's surrounded by, and he's losing his power, but fighting at the same time.
I'm Mina.
Vlad.
This scene is the end of the movie. It's 500 years since the beginning of the story. But you meet him now, it's the 21st century. He's wandering, and he wanders through this market where he's probably wandered many, many times before. And he hears a voice, something stops him in his tracks, and he turns around and he sees what is, to our minds, Marina, but Marina's dead. This is a reincarnation of her, this woman that triggered all these memories from hundreds of years ago. Something happens there, history repeating itself. And that's where we leave the movie. That's where we leave the story. Open to possibilities. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope you learned a few things you didn't know before. Playing the origin of Dracula has been a dream come true for me, and I am so glad I got to share this with you. I hope you enjoyed it.
You forget who I am. My name is Dracula. Did I scare you?
You flatter yourself.
The flowers. For your husband.
They're for Easter tomorrow.
But there is a husband.
There is. But he maintains little interest in flowers.
I'm surprised. He obviously has a keen appreciation for beauty.
Lad, this is foolishness.
Discreet.
What if someone sees us?
Lucky them.
Is this a bad time?
It is now.
It's perfectly fine to be true.
This better be important.
I'm afraid it is.
To take on a role that comes from history, it's incredibly exciting. Morning.
Morning. Can I take your bag?
It's very early. It's 5 o'clock. Yeah, this is a normal time I get up in the morning. Today we start the Vlad versus 1,000 fight. There's a lot of work today. But I always try and just have a relax. I've got a pillow, so I've become a master of sleeping in the back of a car. Coming in. I get one of these every day. It's a call sheet. It basically shows you all the scenes and descriptions of all the scenes we're doing today. I change costume, I warm up, I rehearse, and then I kill 1,000 Turks. Normal day.
I'm Harriet and I'm Luke's dresser. Yeah, we're just getting dressed now, ready for this scene, so it's all kind of continuity to stuff we've done already.
Winter's arrived, so no more lots of layers, so we don't get cold. Layer upon layer upon layer.
There's foot warmers inside the boots. You ready?
I can't get into this costume alone, that's the thing. Can I? It takes two people. The black in the back in the black today.
In the black.
Okay. So that's us off the set. That's everything. We're ready to start setting the scene.
Hi, Luke. How are you?
Good.
The Smitty, and you're walking over here. You impale them. Put the pole on the ground.
Taking the impaling, or because they've just said her vision is here, I can't do any of the action if that's where her sideline is. This scene comes after these guys have basically just tried to burn me in that place down there. As you can see now, it's completely decimated.
Do you think you are alive because you can fight? You are alive because of me! Because of what I did to save you all!
This is not anymore.
It's a bit of a moment of tragic revelation. My son in the film, Ingress, at this point, is behind the water wheel in the background, and actually he gets front row seats to this awful event without me realizing it.
Return to your stations. Believe me, there is still more to fear.
We're heading over to the second unit, and we're going to pick up the fight, which is called the Vlad versus 1,000 fight. There's just been a lot of training, a lot of rehearsal. This is by far the biggest fight sequence I've ever learned. It's huge, it's massive, but it looks fantastic, and that's good. The training is constant, rehearsals, and it's quite nice when you finally get to shoot, because you know you never have to do it again. Today we're doing fight sequences, which means my hair and my face and my hands are constantly being wrecked and ends up flying away and looking ridiculous. So Lizzie's there to make sure I don't look ridiculous. So this is the final sequence of a very, very long fight. The longest fight sequence I've ever had to learn for any movie I've ever done.
The makeup's going in stages through the fight, so he comes into the fight and there's, he's quite clean, and the fight's in 8 stages. So what I'm trying to do is break him down every other stage, because we've already shot the end of the scene when he gets back to the monastery and he's covered in blood and dirt and everything else, and somehow so it's sort of like a process.
I probably spend more time with this woman in the day than anybody else. Without Lizzie, I can't be Dracula.
We're just doing the blue screen elements of the Vlad versus 1,000. We've been prepping this fight now for about 3-4 months. We've been rehearsing extensively with the stunt team and also with Luke when we can get him.
The training for this has been insane, and I have to keep it up because the fighting that I do in this film demands strength. It's hard, it's seriously hard, and it's the stamina that you need. I trained every day, I was on 5,000 calories a day, I was bulking up. When everybody goes home at night, I go to the gym. Oh, look, the violin, oh, poor Luke. But that's what I do, and that's what you have to do. If you're going to take your top off on set and you have to, show the guns or, whatever they want, it's something that you have to think about.
This is the first initial bit when he charges the Turkish army and hits the first front line, which will be a group of our stunt guys, and then we are heading into the first section of 8 that takes us all the way through the Vlad versus 1,000.
We just shot at 72 frames per second, which means it's slow motion, so when they play it at the normal speed, you see all the moves, so every move has to be concise and direct and on point, because in slow motion, if it's cheating, what you're doing, it's got to be really good, so you can't see when the blade doesn't slice the person. I've still got my arms and legs, I'm good. All done? I've got the official wrap, yeah. I thought they might have taken me over to second unit or main unit, but no. Just 1 unit today. It's been a really wonderful experience. It's a shame it's coming to an end, but I guess it's been just fun telling the story and telling it with people that really cared about it and wanted to be here. Everybody's had a great time. We're all sort of orphans here, most of us don't come from Northern Ireland in the cast, so we're all sort of been here and invested all our time and energy into the film, so yeah, good memories, really good memories. Half of my year has been taken up killing Turks and biting people's necks. Coming to the end of the day, that was the final fight that I had to do in the film, but also it's coming to the end of the film. We have 5 days left, 4 days shooting left. That's it really, that's the end of the story, that's the end of the journey. A 9-month journey of work, preparation, rehearsal, training, diet, study, research, sleepless nights, early mornings, late finishes. It's been a very fun experience. I hope you've enjoyed following me for my day. From the second we woke up to the second we said goodbye. It's not as easy as it looks. That's one thing my friends and family have noticed when they come and follow me on set and see how long my days are. They go, oh, okay, it's not all glamour, is it? It's not all red carpets and nice suits. But no, it's good to work hard. Okay, take care. See you soon. There's lots of different stories about Vlad the Impaler.
I swear, I will not give in.
Some of them are quite positive and say that he was a fantastic leader and respected by his enemies.
Mehmed will punish all of Transylvania for what you have done. We will not be defeated!
Vlad was a prince of a country called Wallachia, which is now Romania. Throughout history, as time has gone by, he's been remembered as Vlad the Impaler, the guy that impaled thousands of people on stakes in a field, you know, men, women, and children, and animals and everything. But that torture was actually taught to him by the Turks.
Back in the days in Europe, around the 16th century, kids from Slavic countries were taken by the Turks and raised to become like killing machines.
The Sultan requires 1,000 boys to join his Janissary Corps.
It shocked and outraged a lot of people at the time. They take boys out of these countries, indoctrinate them into their faith and into their army.
Like mercenary soldiers, they've been taken at a very young age, between the age of maybe 8 and 12, mostly from the Balkans. They would be Christian, absorbed into the Sultan's household, treated as a family member because they're taken so young. They are ruthless, loyal, they'll kill for him, they'll die for him.
Mehmet's father took Vlad in, or stole him away from his own family to bring him up as a child warrior. But we grow up as brothers together.
Mehmet is the Sultan's natural son. Vlad was more of the son that the Sultan wanted, even though Vlad was adopted. Probably when they were growing up, Mehmet could see that the Sultan favored Vlad.
There was certainly an animosity there from very early on, you know. Vlad, you know, referred to as the Transylvanian pup living in the house of the Sultan, and he earned the Turkish people's respect, he earned the Sultan's respect.
Vlad was the guy that if Mehmet I could have handed over his throne and his power, he would have given it to Vlad, because Vlad seemed to show all the signs of being a great leader. Young Mehmet II, on the other hand, was not that human being. He was not that person.
I think there's a certain level of jealousy and envy towards this relationship between my father and this boy.
He probably resented Vlad very much so for being the outsider that came in, gained the love of his father, and actually was doing a much better job at inheriting the throne than he was.
There's a bond between these two men, but there's a giant grudge from Mehmet to Vlad that, you know, my father liked you better than me.
And then when Vlad was old enough to leave and go back to his own people, he did. He came back to his own land as a 20-something and took his throne back and then reigned Wallachia quite successfully for quite a few years.
I've missed you.
This is the side of him that people might not know about. He had a family, he loved his wife.
What an embrace, but no kiss.
Are we going to argue?
You're always leaving on me in my film. He's not just this stone wall warrior. I think with his family, he's able to become more of a human.
He's trying to live a life of peace, raise his family, and protect his people, and try to stay away from the wars that plague Europe. And of course, it's this age-old issue of can you escape your destiny?
Something troubles you. What is it?
The Ottoman Empire was on the march in this period in history, and were absolutely putting Europe in their sights.
Mehmed II created the Ottoman Empire by sacking Constantinople and ending, effectively, the Byzantine.
Turks are incredibly successful at conquering nations.
Mehmed's intention is to invade Europe, and his forces have come up through Greece, through Thrace. They would be following the Danube into Europe. He'd be moving his arms along those routes. So unfortunately for the Wallachians, for Vlad's kingdom, it's on the way to what he wants.
Vlad is motivated by a very powerful promise he made to his wife that they'll always be protected.
You asked for my hand. Do you remember what I said?
He said no.
You said things would be different. You said if I loved you, I should trust you. I love you.
And trust meets this, so we start a war.
His predicament kind of brings to mind, how much of your principle would you sell out to protect those who are important to you? Or does the end justify the means?
I will not let you die.
Vlad was a warrior, he was a leader, he was a fighter, and he was a man who stopped the Ottoman invasion of Europe. He stopped it dead in its tracks, which is a historical fact. The Ottoman Empire is something that has left its legacy, and we're very aware of it nowadays. And if it wasn't for Vlad and a few other countries, you know, England might not be England, and you know, Wales might not be Wales. It'd be a very different place.
The way I looked at it when I initially took it on was, this is a historical story. It happens to make a segue into fiction, but it has to be treated first and foremost as a history with, you know, real people and real facts.
The writers did a great job of merging the factual history, which is Vlad the Impaler, with the fictional story, which is Dracula, which we're all very aware of.
Once you drink, your thirst for human blood will be insatiable.
It's the origins story of Dracula.
Not a ghost, something else.
As told through the lens of Vlad the Impaler, and puts it all together into an origins hero story.
I thought they did a very clever job of mixing the two and creating a story that was both appealing, inspiring, enjoyable, and also something reminiscent of something very historical.
It's heroic, which you have not seen a lot of Dracula stories that are heroic.
If you're going to start a story about such a legendary character who does exist throughout centuries, what better place to start than the beginning? It just draws you in.
This is the 1,000-man fight where Vlad, in his rage, cuts his way through 1,000 worth of the Turkish army.
This is where you actually see Vlad use his newly found powers as a vampire. He basically stops 1,000 men in their tracks.
We've been prepping this fight now for about 3-4 months. We've been rehearsing extensively with the stunt team and also with Luke.
The training for this has been insane, and I have to keep it up because the fighting that I do in this film demands strength. It's not something that you can just pick up a sword and just learn a choreography.
This is a physically demanding fight. I mean, technically, he's going through 7-8 sections of guys.
It is an epic fight, and Luke knew the fight frontwards and backwards is quite long, and what makes it unique, it's a very linear fight that travels a great distance. And to tell the story of Vlad fighting 1,000-fold army, it's a little daunting to make that work.
We had to break it down into sections that would effectively fit inside the stage. Once he fought one section and got to the end of the stage, we literally just started him back at the other end of the stage on section 2, and then he fights section 2 and gets to the end of the stage. So he just fought like a typewriter.
It's full on. It's relentless, you know.
Every set.
Let's go. See what I mean?
Set and go.
We had to work out who was getting pulled out by a wire, who was getting stabbed, who was getting swords left in them, who was getting sliced.
Speed, video, 3, 2, 1, go.
We're shooting stunt choreography of Vlad cutting through the stunt performers, and we've got lots of extras.
Essentially, we've got 100 extras, low armour and high armour, who are the front rank of the Turkish army.
Where the blue screen is, we'll be extending what is 100 people in here into the 1,000-man army.
Tried to encompass a lot of skill that you wouldn't really see in a sword fight or a hand-to-hand fight. I think they wanted to see really Vlad in all his glory.
At the end of the sequence, Vlad chucks a sword into a Turk. And then we become that Turk's POV. So as he's wheeling around and falling to the ground, we're looking into the sword that's in his chest and seeing the reflection of what Vlad is doing up to the moment he hits the ground and pulls the sword away.
I want to thank everybody so much for all our incredible hard work. Every single one of you played a massive part in making all of this possible.
Vlad versus 1,000, yeah. Felt like I've killed about 1,000 men. No, it was great. It was really good. It's going to be an awesome scene in the film. Awesome. There's some incredible guys there, and they've really committed so much energy and effort and patience, and it's a very, very long day. Happy days.
So this is quite a big scene for us. The scene will be Vlad desperately falling after her, desperately trying to catch her.
When I first met Gary, he called me, he said, I've gone and I've drawn something. This is how I see the film. And I was so blown away.
Marina, when she falls, we'll see her tip backwards here. And we're going to be shooting her laying on a back pan and being blown by fans. That will give the illusion of freefall.
We're on our blue screen stage and we're about to shoot Luke, and he'll be sort of in a Superman position, and we'll orient the camera so that it looks like he's falling straight down. And because he's against the blue screen, you don't really have a sense of orientation. When you see it all composited with all of the background moving, you'll feel as though he's really falling.
I thought that, Dracula could really come of age in terms of taking advantage of the visual effects that we could employ now.
Vlad controls a massive flock of hundreds of thousands of bats. But it conducts them really like a conductor, and he controls them, brings them down on the 100,000 Turkish army out in the Borgo Pass.
We worked for months trying to get images that we felt were worthy of the story and new and different. And I think, oddly enough, the breakthrough was looking at starlings.
I showed Gary some reference of murmuration of starlings. Starlings move in a very fluid and interesting way when you get literally, again, thousands of them. So we're going to use a combination of motion capturing a performer doing hand movements and having these bats flock in and out of a shape that is changing all the time.
Action.
I hear you have a weakness for silver. The fight that I'm doing a majority of my training for is toward the end of the film when Vlad and Mehmet fight to the death.
The great thing about Dominic is that he only had one massive fight in the whole film, so we could really take him to one side and nail him every day.
It has to look real and it has to look good. So I've been working with these incredible stunt guys. They've been such good teachers and they've been so inspiring about why it needs to be so good.
There came a point where you could see his whole mentality just flipped, and then all of a sudden his level just skyrocketed. It's trying to get somebody mentally ready so that when it come to fighting in a hot studio, cramped, in armor, that you could just switch off and get on with the job. So once he breaks,
Really swing back.
Okay.
You are slower, brother, and weaker.
This is exhausting work. I'm trying to kill Dominic Cooper and he's trying to kill me. Dominic is great. He's like my enemy in this, and so we're playing off each other very well.
It's a fight sequence which we've been putting together for about 4 months and changing it on a weekly basis.
Every time we have a small hour or half an hour here or there, we rehearse it and it gets tweaked and changed, and then we come to set and it gets changed again because we have surroundings, we have things that we can't do certain moves, and so you're constantly adapting and having to sort of stay on top of the game.
You put hours and hours in, but it's great because you learn the sequence, you feel confident with the sequence, and then you can play around with it and change it and manipulate it as much as you need to.
Come on, let's do it again.
Seeing a real sword fight, they wouldn't stop and make sure they rig out. Okay.
I miss our days together.
All I miss from my time with you is the coffee.
It's true, my father's palace was a cruel place for a young boy far from home.
I think where Mehmet's, in my opinion, for me, playing him, where his pain comes from and the decision behind all his actions and the motivation behind that is from the dying days of his father. He shared his last dying thoughts and closest moment with Vlad, and I think that that's kind of pained him all his life.
Want to know what your father's last words truly were? He said, if only my coward of a son was dying instead of me.
When you're playing a character or a villain or someone who emanates evil, it's great and quite rare to have something to understand the backstory that much. When you're playing out at having that much power, it's not very good for your psyche or how you behave. You know, momentarily after you come out of those scenes, you're a slightly warped individual, I think.
Bless you.
You're home now.
I just want peace. That's all.
I think so much of Morena's story in the film is centered around the love story between her and Vlad, and then also just the story of love and family with her, Vlad, and Ingris. And so I spent a lot of time in rehearsals with Luke trying to define, I guess, a real love story and a real relationship, not one that was kind of boxed in just like a classic love story. We wanted it to seem real and accessible to a modern audience watching this film.
He came back.
I always will.
And I think for her as a character, finding real kind of ideas that we could steep what was happening in the script into reality. So we drew a lot on the idea, the notion of somebody going off to war and what it's like to have somebody leaving you and having the stakes being so high and not knowing if they were ever going to come back again. And these were very high-stake times. You know, here's a warrior, a prince, a fighter, and a leader actually going out and risking his life for his people and his family.
I will fight beside you until death.
Your death would end my fight.
I think each of them, the three of them, they represent this strong family unit that, for me, the whole film is about protecting.
I will always watch over you.
The Master Vampire is part of a kind of great scheme of things. And he's the games master, basically.
The Master Vampire is somebody who has been trapped in the cave himself from centuries ago.
For centuries, these mouldering walls have been my gallows. And I'm bound to this cave, condemned by one who turned me. I'm about 1,000 years old, and I've lived in this dark, horrible cave for a very long time, waiting for a man of Vlad the Impaler's strength and will to come along and be worthy of the darkness and all its gifts that I have to offer.
Drink. You will have a taste of my power.
Vlad seeks vengeance, but he needs the tools to wreak that vengeance. And the only place he can get them is me. Drink. Let the games begin. What kind of man crawls into his own grave in search of hope?
A desperate one. The Turks threaten to destroy my kingdom. With power like yours, I could stop them.
Vlad seeks vengeance, but he needs the tools to wreak that vengeance. And the only place he can get them is me. I'm about 1,000 years old, and I've lived in this dark, horrible cave for a very long time, waiting for a man of Vlad the Impaler's strength and will to come along and be worthy of the darkness and all its gifts that I have to offer. And what's on offer is pretty appealing. The strength of 100 men, the speed of a falling star, dominion over the night and all its creatures, even heal grievous wounds.
That's useful.
We have a character who's taking on these powers for the first time. And no film had really taken advantage of treating Dracula like a superhero origin story.
It's a bit of a self-discovery. He slowly but surely discovers that he has these abilities, and then but he's not completely sure they're going to work.
We set a high bar of trying to always be original with the way we deal with certain vampire iconic images. We've always seen Dracula change form into a beast, a burden, or a bat. It's time-honored, it's been done before.
We didn't want to do the old Christopher Lee, he turned into one bat. We were trying to think of a cool way of doing that, and so we've always got him turning into multiple bats.